Hello, how are you? How is it going? Welcome back to Dungeons and Dragons. Oh my gosh, it's a gassy day for me again. Okay, well, hopefully it doesn't interfere too much. Okay, so look, we're going to be doing some complex combat mechanics today. We've done basic, it's time to do complex. Now, for those of you who have already seen this presentation in the past, I have a surprise for you. Because after my normal presentation for this, I have something special, something that I think you'll enjoy. And so I would stick around for that because it's going to be worth your time, I'm sure of it. Okay, so I'm going to post up a poll here. And then I'm also going to just check my webcam to make sure my webcam's working fine because apparently my desk cam is working all right. And if there are any problems, I can probably, if you feel that there's too much light being thrown onto that desktop, you let me know and I can change it down. I can adjust it if I need to. Okay, anyway, doing all right. Seems like we've got things mostly under control. I'll pull out my earplugs. And let's, I can see people have had plenty of time to get in. Dungeons and Chronics, welcome. How are you doing, Dungeons and Chronics? Now, let's get on with the slideshow. How's it going, David Rose? So what is happening today? It's very simple. I am going to present a lot of information to you. And once I've done that, using a slideshow, I'm then going to open up to Q&A, questions and answers. But ultimately, in the end, this class is about demonstration. So we have to go down to the table, maps, miniatures, dice, and actually show you how things work and explain it as we go. That is what I want to focus on. So I'm going to try very hard to sort of make sure we have the vast majority of the time designated for that. And I will apologise if I sound like I am sick because I always seem to be. How's it going, Noroak? How's it going? Okay, let's get on with the stream, shall we? I think we are ready to go. Oh, where is it? Here it is. Okay. Hi, welcome to Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons because I usually do. We could be looting bodies, but maybe not. We'll see how we go. Dungeons and Dragons 5e rules. That's what we're covering today. This is lesson 3, complex combat mechanics. What are they? What do they look like? Are they in fact complex? Blah-de-blah-de-blah. So what I'm going to cover today is the following. The hide action in combat. What is a readied action and how to use it in a battle? How does grapple work in a fight? What makes shove different from grapple? Cover, and that means we've got 3 different types of cover, so I'm going to cover all of that. Haha. Death saving throws for characters. And we can also talk about death saving throws for non-player characters if you like. Miscellaneous recommendations. It's always my approach to try to cover as much as I possibly can, but of course, when it comes to the rules for 5e, it's probably impossible to cover every single complex rule there is. So my intention is to explain what I've just discussed or mentioned, demonstrate as much as possible, and allow you to participate through Q&A, and also, in some respects, you may find yourself rolling dice. So make sure you have dice available just in case. You never know, these things can happen. I'm going to refer you to D&D Beyond because the basic rules for Dungeons & Dragons 5e is available there. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. You can sign up for free to D&D Beyond. You can also download a PDF that has the basic rules. It doesn't have absolutely everything, but it probably has enough to get by, and I am going to recommend it as a place to go to grab stuff because it's a good resource. Now, I was talking about various actions, so I'm going to talk about each one of these one by one. The hide action first. Hide requires you use your main action. So, as a character or a monster, you use your main action to hide. And what you're trying to do, basically, you're going to be unseen from a foe. Okay? You've got to make a dexterity or a stealth check, and it's opposed by a passive perception check or an active perception check in some case. The thing is that when you decide to hide, you need something to hide in or something to hide behind. And so this is where things get complicated. Probably one of the most difficult concepts to grasp, particularly when it comes to combat. It gets complicated. There are lots of different other factors that come into play. And so dungeon masters really need to take ownership of the hide action and the perception skill to actually make this work. So that's the hide action. The next one is our readied action. By far my least favorite action in the game because it does cause a lot of confusion for obvious reasons. The readied action requires you use your main action, okay, so that your character or monster can use their reaction based on some sort of stipulated trigger by using an action or part of your movement before the start of the next turn. So that's a lot of information there. So what does this look like? So whether it is your character, your player character, or the monsters or the NPCs, what they do is on their turn, they use their action. Okay, and they say, I'm going to take a readied action. What would this look like? Say if you are going to fire your bow at a creature, but only if they pop their head out so you can see them. So you say to the dungeon master, I'm going to ready an action to fire my bow or my long bow or short bow at the, say, goblins or orcs when they pop their head out of the bushes. When I can see them, to shoot them, that's when I fire. Because right now I can't see anything. And this is often what the readied action is used for, simply for that fact, is there's no target to actually shoot at because they're behind cover and they cannot be seen. So you've done that. So you've used up your action. You may have moved before you've done that. You may have used a bonus action as well before you've taken the readied action. That's fine. And then on somebody else's turn, the dungeon master's turn, if you are readying your action to shoot at goblins or orcs, it triggers, but only when the goblin or orc pops their head out of the bushes. Okay, the goblins are now visible, they've popped their head out of the bushes, I'm going to take that bow attack, and that's when it's triggered. Okay, that takes place. Now, if you get right round to the next turn for you, your next turn, then your readied action is no longer in place. It's removed from play. And this is simply to make the game simpler to actually understand and to contend with. Now, the thing is, you can ready a lot of different actions. You can ready an attack with a bow. You can ready an attack with a melee weapon if you want to. Like you could say, I see the goblin in front of me, looks like he's getting tired. I tell him to surrender and drop his weapons. And I'm going to ready an action to strike him if he doesn't do that. So when it comes around to the dungeon master's turn, when they use their monsters, and if they don't do that, then you trigger your readied action, and of course the goblin or orc gets butchered by your great axe or whatever it is. Or you might use a spell where you decide, okay, I'm going to cast this spell, but only on the condition that it's going to work. In this case, what I'm looking for is I'm going to cast Fireball when I see all of the orcs or goblins rush out of the bushes towards us and cross the battlefield. I'm going to target them right in the middle when I've got the most of them covered by my spell. That's when I'm going to use my spell. It might be I'm going to use the invisibility spell if somebody tries to attack me. If somebody looks like they're about to attack me, before that happens, I'm going to trigger my invisibility. Okay, got it, understood. Okay, so we've got readied actions, but you can also not just use an action and ready it. You can take your movement. You say, I'm going to move further away if somebody tries to come closer towards me. I'm going to ready an action to move further away. Why am I doing that? Well, who knows? There might be a good reason, there might be a bad reason. It doesn't really matter, but you can do it. And you can even ready a bonus action if you wanted to. But here's the thing. It would expend your main action to do so. It gets complicated. So this is why I don't like the readied action. Anyway, grapple. Grapple is one of those special things you can do. Okay? It's a special melee attack that stops a creature moving. And what you do is you perform a contest between your strength athletics check. Okay, so when you try to engage that grapple, you're using a strength or athletics check. You must succeed on the target creature's strength or athletics or dexterity acrobatics check. So to put it on, you must use strength and athletics, but to resist and try and stop it from happening, the target creature, or the monster in this case, say, so if you were to play a character, they can use their strength check, an athletics check, a dexterity check, or an acrobatics check to resist. And you have to get greater than, because it's a contest. You can't get equal to, you have to get greater than. If you get equal to, nothing happens, nothing changes. If you get less than the target creature's score, then you fail. So that's the grapple. What it does is it basically does nothing more than stop them from moving around. They just can't move anymore. It doesn't mean that they have disadvantage or anything like that. All it's done is to stop movement. The shove action. Yet again, it's one of those special melee attacks that you can make. That either it knocks a creature prone or pushes a creature 5 feet away, and you perform a contest just as I have just described, where you have to use either your strength or athletics check, and that's the only choice that you have against the target creature's strength or athletics check, or they can use dexterity acrobatics to try to resist the force of being pushed. Now here's the thing. If you have an attack, or more than one attack, you can replace one of those attacks with the shove or grapple. So that means that it does interplay quite nicely with the extra attack feature, or in the case that you have more than one attack available to you, which is quite cool. But there's some other questions that we have to ask about this particular feature, the shove. Now, when is it going to come into play? When is it actually useful to do so? Often you'll find that something like shove is great. If you are in the right position on an initiative, shoving a creature prone means that everybody who's up close in melee gets advantage if they're prone. But it only works if the initiative order is set up in such a way that the monsters will go after all the player characters. And you would also need to be very much at the top end of the initiative. And it also probably doesn't work very well unless you have a very high strength modifier or a very high athletics modifier. Otherwise, you're probably not going to succeed in this strategy. So it's very situational. There are ways of setting it up. You make sure that you are proficient with athletics, and you also make sure that you have alert. So you get a +5 to your initiative, which means you're probably going to be at the top end of initiative, no matter what you roll. So that's how the shove action works. There's a thing called cover. Surprisingly, a lot of people do not use cover in the game, and probably for very good reason. It's easy to forget. Like, literally, it's the most forgettable rule under the sun. But there are people who do remember how to use it and do want to use it, and so we have to talk about it. Cover can make it more difficult for an attack to hit you, or for a spell to affect the characters or the monsters. So there's a way of dealing with this. What does it look like? Well, essentially, half cover grants you a +5 bonus to your armor class if you've got half cover, and it also gives you a +2 bonus to your dexterity saving throw, which means it's harder to hit you with a spell that requires a dexterity saving throw, such as Fireball or Lightning Bolt. But here's the thing. Some spells ignore cover, and when the spell states that they ignore cover, then this cover bonus doesn't mean anything. Okay, so what does half cover look like? Well, as long as half of the creature has been covered, you have half cover. So if you can't see half of the creature, now this only really relates to medium-sized creatures, because larger creatures, the rules don't really apply in that case. Which is confusing, I know, but if you are medium-sized or smaller, half cover, half the body covered. If you are large size, or is it huge size and bigger, then you really, these rules don't really apply quite so much. It gets complicated, and to be fair, it's even more complicated because apparently your allies who are medium sized, if they're standing in front of you, they provide you cover from somebody trying to shoot you. So if somebody wants to shoot past your buddy or allies at you, you've now got a +2 bonus because they have to shoot past the fighter. Who would have guessed? So now creatures also provide cover, and half cover is the one that you usually use. 3/4 cover. This grants a +5 bonus to armor class and also a +5 bonus to dexterity saving throws. Really useful. Okay, so what does 3/4 cover look like? Well, an arrow slit would be half cover. 3/4 cover, sorry. And if you had, say, the battlements of a castle, that probably would provide 3/4 cover. It means that 3/4 of the body of the creature has been covered, or at least that much. And so you would get that bonus. Okay, cool. Does that mean if I'm standing in some bushes that I would have 3/4 cover? Well, no, that depends on the Dungeon Master deciding whether that classified as being half covered or 3/4 cover. So there's no guarantee that you're necessarily standing in 3/4 cover, but certainly looking for something that provides 3/4 cover is a good idea because it's a +5 bonus to armor class and to your dexterity saving throw. Okay, so that's 3/4 cover. You always want to use cover if you can, particularly if you're using the rules for cover. What about total cover? What does that mean? How does that look? It means a creature can't be targeted by a spell or an attack unless it's an area effect is involved. It's because some area effect spells can get around total cover, and it's unfortunately based very much on the nature of the total cover you have. Like if total cover is you're in a box with a top on it and there's just no way for the spell to get in there or go around the cover, then it probably won't work. But if you're dealing with a stone wall where the spell effect may be able to go around the corner, then maybe it will work. It's not necessarily that easy to determine sometimes. Total cover just basically means that you can't see the creature. Okay, if you can't be seen at all because you're standing behind a big brick wall or behind a door or something like that and there's nothing visible, you have total cover. And almost all attacks operate this way. If you can't see it, any part of the creature, it's considered total cover. You can't make an attack, whether it's ranged or melee, and you can't use a spell against somebody who's got that kind of cover, unless, of course, you've got a spell that has something around it that sort of says, yes, I can deal with total cover. Again, not completely obvious how it works because there are some conditions and situations where it would be different. Okay, probably the most asked question. It's a very complicated set of rules, death saving throws, but probably easier to understand than the ready action, which has got way too many things that crop up. So let's have a look at how death saving throws work. A death saving throw is performed at the start of a character's turn, not at the end of their turn, so it's always performed at the very beginning of their turn. And it's only performed if they have 0 hit points and they're not dead yet. If they have been instantly killed, you wouldn't do a death saving throw. They're dead. You can't make a death saving throw if you're dead. So what do you do when you're on 0 hit points and you are dying but you're not dead yet? Well, we make the death saving throw and you're going to roll 1 20-sided dice. And you don't add anything to it. There are things that can add bonuses to it, but as a general rule, okay, you do not add any modifiers from your abilities or anything else to this saving throw. This saving throw is very different to everything else that you've seen in the game in terms of a saving throw. If you roll a 10 or higher, that counts as a success. You get 1 success. If you roll a 9 or less, that counts as 1 failure. Okay, alright, so we understand how to get successes and failures, but there are a couple of different things we need to mention, and that is, if you roll a 1, so you don't just roll less than 9, okay, 9 and less. If you roll a 1 on a 20-sided dice, that counts as 2 failures. Not just 1, but 2. If you roll a 20 on the d20, okay, so you don't just roll 10 or more, you actually get 20 on the dice, you regain 1 hit point. Now, if you regain 1 hit point and you're on 0 hit points and you're dying, you're now conscious, which means you can now act. And because a death saving throw is made at the beginning of your turn, it means you can get back up and you can take your turn. Yes, that's right. You can get back up and you can take your turn. I know some people don't like this, but that's how it works. Now, if we're making these saving throws and we're getting successes and failures, when does it count as we're all right and when does it count as we are dead as a doorknob? Well, you need to have 3 cumulative successful death saving throws to stabilize a creature. You won't be on 1 hit point. You'll still be on 0 hit points, but you won't be dying. You will not be required to make any more death saving throws, but you need to get 3 cumulative successful death saving throws. They do not need to be in a row. You could get a successful save, then fail a save, and then get 2 more successful saves, and in total you got 3 successful saves, so you're now stable. Okay? You're not dying, but you're not conscious, and you're not on 1 hit point. But if you make 3 cumulative failures, this results in a character's death. That means you might be able to make 1 successful save, and then the next 3 saves you make are all failures, which means you're dead now because you have 3 failures. That's how death saving throws work. Now, it is actually there for a reason. It's essentially designed to ensure that players have something to do while they're waiting for something to happen. Okay, it's not necessarily there to annoy people. And it is actually relatively easy to dissect the death saving throw rules from 5e without affecting the game too much. So if you ever wanted to do that, you probably can, and I do in fact have a video on that topic. Anyway, that's death saving throws. Usually when I do these things, I have some miscellaneous recommendations. And again, I do have some miscellaneous recommendations. When unsure what to do or what to apply to a situation, given whatever crazy things the players might decide to do, or whatever you hatch up with your dungeon and the dungeon master hatches up with a monster, what do you apply? Well, in any given situation, you look at what they're doing and you decide based on that. They tell you the action and you decide, does it make sense that they make an ability check here? Or should they make a skill check? Or is it going to be more like an attack roll? Or is it more like a saving throw to determine if it works or if it fails? That's the easiest way to actually deal with that. Otherwise, if it doesn't make sense to roll dice, then you're looking at something else. You could allow automatic success if what they're trying to do makes sense, that it's so easy to perform that they shouldn't have any chance of failure, even if you are in the middle of combat. Or, if whatever they're trying to do seems utterly ridiculous and impossible to perform, then absolutely apply automatic failure because it makes sense in this situation. These are things that you as a dungeon master, you need to take ownership of the rules at some point. I know some players find that difficult. I know players won't be happy to hear me saying something like this, but the game is about being able to try anything. It's not about being able to do anything, okay? It's about being able to try anything, and then you figure out if it's going to succeed or not. And the only way for this to be possible, since a video game can't do it, is to use the human brain. That's what the Dungeon Master's there for, is to figure out how to adjudicate that situation when it falls outside of the rules. I want to make one more comment before I finish here, and that is, sometimes the rules are a straitjacket, and there are times when adhering to the rules as written or raw, or even rules as intended, is actually diminishing the game. And I'm not talking about rules as fun, because I don't believe in rules as fun. What I believe in is rules that make sense. If what they're trying to do would make sense that they should be able to perform it, then I want them to give it a go. Yep. And that's how I see it. So you will find that sometimes adhering to all the rules that have been presented for 5e will actually diminish the ability to actually have a game where you can try anything, because there is a rule that covers things and says you can't do this because for whatever reason. So I just wanted to point that out before I finished up, that sometimes the rules don't set you free. Sometimes they actually make the game more difficult to deal with, and you do need to trust your dungeon master. And as players, you do need to understand that some things need to be adjudicated. Anyway, I'm hoping this was useful to you, and if it was, fantastic. I also want to say, look, if you have questions, put them down in the comment section. By all means, if you have any feedback, give me that information and feedback in the comment section. But I would also like to point out that this is a weekly class. Every week I do this live. And the best time to ask me questions and get an answer from me and have a discussion with me about this is live. in these classes rather than using the comment section once the video or live stream goes up. But also, if you're not able to be there, don't concern yourself too much, because there's a thing called time zone. So what happens with a time zone, as you know, is that my time, as I'm in New Zealand, will change and adjust compared to your time zone, which means there may in fact be a day throughout the year where there's a whole part of the year where you can actually join these live streams and ask questions. You never know. It might happen. It has happened for a few people. In any case, enjoy your game, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm not finished. Just give me a second. Everything is a little bit lined up weird right now, so let me just crack this open to here, and I'll go back to my webcam. I just want to just check my lighting here. Did that make a big difference? No, not really. Maybe it's just my face that's changed. That made a big difference. I can see more shadow, less shadow, more shadow, less shadow. Okay, now I'm just playing with the buttons. It's like you know, your 2-year-old or your 3-year-old gets hold of the light switch button and it just gets killed. Sorry about that. Anyway, pardon me. I am going to try to have a drink of water before I go through the chat, and then we do some demonstration for today. I have decided to talk a little bit more about opportunity attacks and also the ready to action, but I am also open to talking about whatever you want to talk about, because we can talk about anything on this one. Do you know? It's complex combat mechanics, right? And if you are, it's hard for you to get a hold of me at any other time. I mean, I might be able to answer other questions unrelated to the rules. That's fine too. In any case, let us see if I can get the chat up, and let's have a look at what we've got here for today. I'm just going to make sure I've got a few things out of the way. Is that going to work if I put that there, or should I put it up here? Put it up here, maybe that's probably better. Clear a bit of space for myself so I can actually do stuff and see things that are going on. And let's pull it up on my phone. If you're wondering why I keep looking to the right, it's because my monitor has to be to the right to lay out that map. It's quite a big map. It's a big area. It actually makes it quite difficult to actually put everything into position. And so that's what's going on right now. Anyway. Right, okay, so I can see some chat there. We will go through the chat very quickly, and then of course on the top of the hour I will take a break. So first off, is the ready action complex in Dungeons and Dragons 5e? And we've got 38% said yes out of 13 votes. We have no, 46%. So 46% of you who have answered that poll don't believe that it's a complex rule. Okay, that's fine. Doesn't mean it isn't a complex rule, it just means that you think it isn't a complex rule. You don't find it complex. Undecided, 0. Don't know, 14%. Okay, so we're adjusting now. Different votes going in there. Now, having been a person who has been running a YouTube channel for 6 years now, and as my start began with Dungeons & Dragons 5e on YouTube, and explaining the rules to people, I can assure you, from my experience, and I've had many hundreds of people ask me this question, how to deal with that particular rule. I mean, that rule has caused so much trouble. The ready to action is definitely complex. And of course, once you get to grips with how it operates, it becomes a little bit easier. But even over time, I have found there have been situations that have cropped up where funny things can happen. And you're like, well, now what do I do here? Because this is actually a weird situation. It's very important with the ready to action to give a very clear indication of what the trigger is going to be. Players really struggle with this because I can't count the number of times I've heard somebody say, I'm going to ready an attack. Or I'm going to ready an action. Or they just literally say, I'm going to ready an action. The Dungeon Master says, yeah, but what sort of action do you ready? And what is the trigger? Because you haven't told me any of that. Okay, anyway. I said hi to Dungeons and Chronics. Hello, how are you? David Rose, hello, how are you too? Noroak is here, hello. Noroak is a patron and supports me on Patreon. One of the best ways to support this program continuing, people, I will be relatively quick about talking to people in chat. I want to get onto the demonstration. Is that you get everything on Patreon that I produce. It all goes there, okay? There's a lot yet to go up, and when I finally get some time off, I might be able to finally start putting it out to patrons. But everything we make here, all these programs that I run 5 different programs, plus I have a feature. There's 6 live streams that occur, plus all the edited videos and blah, 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 blah. So you're getting a lot by supporting the channel through Patreon. Otherwise, super chats and super stickers are always welcome, but I would always recommend you back to Patreon because I get most of the money and you get more bang for your buck. Do you know what I mean? All right. Matt Walker, hello. How are you, Matt? Where are we? Shiner81, hello. How are you? Nacho Man is here. Hello, Nacho Man. Nacho Man is also a patron, and thank you very much. Now, where are we? I am scrolling down. Now, I know a lot of people are concerned that I might be hiding my live streams. I do not hide my live streams anymore, okay? For good or for bad, it doesn't get hidden. No more of that. I've listened to people long enough about hiding live streams because YouTube doesn't like live form content because nobody watches an entire hour or 2 hours of live stream, so they don't recommend it. I get it. I've seen the analytics. They don't recommend them very often, but they're still going to stay here. Okay. Dana. Hello, Dana Morningstar. Hello. Have we bumped into each other before? Is it, hopefully I got the name right, Dana. Without constraints to the narrative, you get everything everywhere all at once. You can get everything everywhere all at once, no matter what happens at your game. I don't know what games you've been playing, and I've played in many games and run many games, and I'll tell you, there's no telling what you're going to get at any time, frankly. My next comment is a joke. Okay, I get it. He's warning me that I might take it seriously. It's very hard to communicate to somebody over chat about whether you are having a bit of a joke or not, isn't it? Here's an example of how the rules are showing the rules. A match between the last 2 characters we created. In one corner we have the warrior known as Hellspawn, Shurok, and his opponent knowing Dome. Okay. I'm not reading through it. I'm sorry, Norok. It's just not gonna happen. You can tell the story. I mean, that's cool, but I'm not gonna read it out. I'm not even gonna read it. I just don't have time. We're here to actually deal with the rules. That's what the purpose is of this in the first place. Nacho, what do you got here? I'm preparing for Cragmore Castle for tonight's game by attaching a list of random goblin names to my Dungeon Master screen. Good for you. Absolutely. I think that's a very good idea. In fact, Nacho, you have just pointed out that that's actually something I should probably add to my notes. Would you not agree? I mean, I think that's probably something that I think this is why you mentioned it, isn't it? It's your subtle way of getting me to. So for those of people who don't know, a lot of the programs that I run, even though I run them over and over again, they do change and morph over time. And Nacho Man, as a patron, he knows, because he has talked to me before, that I will modify and update them. So that means that even if I run something a particular way, if somebody comes up with a really good idea, I will add that to that program, simply because it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Nothing can stay exactly the same forever. So you make a very good point, Nacho, that actually maybe there should be a little section that says create a list of names for your solutions. Let's stick it under solutions, shall we? Create a list of goblin names before you run the castle location. It has been added. It has been noted and it has been added. I hope you are pleased. Okay, what do you got here, Dungeons and Chronics? How do you deal with strength checks, tie? Well, I mean, I can show you, but I'll explain it very quickly. A tie between a strength check means nobody succeeds. Nothing happens, nothing changes. You'd have to redo the check again to see what happens. Basically, it's like having an arm wrestle and nobody goes either way. It stays in the middle. Like, you know. So if you make a strength check and it's a tie, for example, for a shove or grapple, and I feel like this is going to be better if I start doing numbers on stuff and using the board, but we'll see how we go. Essentially, you don't succeed. You have to get greater than. That's the contest we're talking about. So a tie, there's no change. Yep. Are you going to rewatch the Cragmore Castle videos last night? You rewatched them? Yes. So I even rewatch my own videos before I run a program, just to see if there's anything that pops up in the chat that I missed. I'm hoping that it was helpful to you. Hostages, always good. You want to have hostages. Okay, so we're going to move over to what I had promised I was going to share with you, which is I'm going to talk about the opportunity attack. And I thought what I would do first is actually go over the opportunity attack with you very, very briefly, and then I'm going to go back to where the heck is this thing? No, that's almost there. Bear with me. I'm trying to look between microphones and monitors on angles and stuff, and it's not so easy. Come on, you. Yep. Drag you down over here. My big hoary face is in the way. Here we go. And then we'll make that bigger. And I think that's right. Okay, this is on D&D Beyond. Let's have a look at what it says. And then once I've done that, I'm going to do the most obvious thing, which is I'm going to take us to the battle mat. And I'll explain what I think you might want to consider. Opportunity attacks. In a fight, everyone is constantly watching for a chance to strike an enemy who is fleeing or passing by. Such a strike is called an opportunity attack. Now, these things have been around for a while. It's not actually a new concept. The way that they've been applied has changed over time. So in 5e, this is how it works. You can make an opportunity attack when a hostile creature that you can see moves out of your reach. So if you can't see them, you can't do it. They have to be inside your reach, so that means they need to be within melee reach, not anything else. Okay. To make the opportunity attack, you use your reaction. So you're doing a reaction on whoever's taking their turn to make one melee attack, okay, against the provoking creature. Now, it says one melee attack. It didn't say one melee weapon attack, but it said one melee attack. Did it not? It did. Okay. The attack occurs right before the creature leaves your reach. Okay. So you make the attack when they provoke, and then once they're finished, if they're still alive, they continue moving away from you. Fine. Cool. You can avoid provoking an attack of opportunity by taking the disengage action. So you have to use your whole action to do so. And then, of course, you move away your speed, and then, of course, next turn, the monster moves their speed up to you and then hits you again, and you really haven't succeeded in doing anything. Okay, that's strange, but that's how it works. That's how it's written. You also don't provoke an opportunity attack when you teleport. One of the things that I've seen, Misty Step, there have been arguments about Misty Step, teleportation, dimension door, blah-de-blah-de-blah. If you teleport in any way whatsoever, there's no attack of opportunity. Or when someone or something moves you without using your movement, action, or reaction. So if you're not using your own movement to move away, you don't provoke. If you're not using your own action to move away, you don't provoke. If you're not using your own reaction, you don't provoke. Doesn't apply. Okay, so we understand. Okay, and then they give you an example. One of the... I'm wondering if I should just point this out. What happens, though, if I decide to do something a little different? Like I could do... I could actually avoid taking an attack if I wanted to by doing something a little bit out of the box. I could cast a spell. Could I not? I could cast a spell. Now, what spell will that be? I'm actually not talking about something like Misty Step. I'm actually talking about something else completely different. Yeah. Now, when it comes to being moved by whatever is taking place, okay, so that means that if you push somebody, you're not using up their movement or their action or their reaction when they go back 5 feet, are you? It's not a reaction when they get pushed back 5 feet. That's not a reaction. So that means if you push somebody backwards and somebody's right beside you and they move and the creature moves out of their reach, it's not provoking an attack of opportunity. That means that the shove action is not necessarily going to provoke a attack of opportunity. I know that's a question people would ask. Okay, so now we know this. That's good to know. All right, now that makes sense. But also too, for an example, you don't provoke an opportunity attack if an explosion hurls you out of a foe's reach, or if gravity causes you to fall past an enemy. This is another thing that seems to come up. I think it's the falling past, or where you're falling past or moving past somebody else, and then you provoke an attack of opportunity. You came into reach and then you passed out, so it's time to attack you. No, it doesn't work. As far as the rules are written, it says no, that doesn't work that way. And then there's a little section on contests, and really that there is just makes life more complicated, but let's just stick with opportunity attacks for now. Okay, so you get my point. But there's actually a couple of things that I would actually like to discuss with you with regard to opportunity attacks, and maybe we've actually been doing things like too much to the rules. So for those of you who showed up to get only the raw today, you're not necessarily just getting the raw. And if that's not what you want, you need to say so, and by all means switch off and go somewhere else. But before you do that, please can give me time to explain what I have in mind. Okay. Hello, Seeker, how are you? And hello, how are you? Is it Robert? When it says melee weapon attack plus 11 to hit, reach 5 feet, 1 target, hit 8. Okay, so Robert, we can actually answer your question. And since I'm going to be going straight to that in a second, I'm going to write that up for you right now, and I'll demonstrate it, and then we're going to go straight into what I was about to just demonstrate, which was the opportunity attack and a different way of doing things, maybe. Yeah? Okay. Weapon. And so you have just told me all of the maths that I need to know, and then you've got reach 5 feet. That's nice and easy. And then you've got here the actual calculation for our dice, which is great. So 2d10 plus 7. All right. Okay. Well, I think I can accommodate that today. Surprisingly, I do actually have some bits and pieces lined up that can show you exactly what that means. So let's do that. So switching over to a different screen, people. For those of you who are hoping I would finally move back to the battle map, it's going to happen. Don't worry. Where is the button? There it is. Here we go. Over we go. This is where we are. This is our workspace for today. I'm going to do a lot of work here today. Okay, so this is Robert's question that he came up with. And, oh. Dear. Okay. All right. So let's have a look at your question, Robert. This is what you're dealing with currently. This is the question that you have presented me with. So what does that look like? Well, first off, our plus 11 refers to what we rolled to hit the target. So let's get rid of some dice and grab the dice that we need for this situation. Okay. So first off, I need a 20-sided dice. That's going to apply to the 11 for our attack. So, okay. And then you have here 2d10 plus 7. So we're going to add 7 to rolling 2 10-sided dice. So we need to find some 10-sided dice, if I have any here. That's one. That's a 1 10-sided dice there. So we'll put that over here. That's part of that one. And I think I have another one floating around because I used it not so long ago that we can actually use as well. If I can find this. There it is. There it is. So we've got another one. So two 10-sided dice. Now the number that you've got outside the brackets I'll explain as well, but let's just work our way through our situation. Here is our fighter. I'm going to move our fighter up. We're going to move up, say, let's grab the owlbear for now. I think the owlbear that feels like a good target to be smashing. Let's hit an owlbear, shall we? Right now I'm putting out the owlbear stats. I don't know if you can necessarily see that. Hopefully you can. Right now the armor class for our owlbear is a 13. So what we do is we take our 20-sided dice, we make an attack. Melee means we need to be within 5 feet. You said 5 feet reach, so 5 feet, that's 5 feet. That's not 5 feet. You need to be right next to it. You're within 5 feet. If it was further away, that would be considered 10 feet. There's one square between you and the monster. Each square represents 5 feet. Does that make sense? You let me know, Robert, if I've lost you. Okay, so we take our 20-sided dice, we decide we're going to make an attack. This attack looks like it's a pretty hefty attack, so we're taking our 20-sided dice. We don't have advantage or disadvantage, so we roll one of these. Whatever I roll on the dice is what I add to the 11. Okay, so 11 and 17 is 28. 28 is the final result for our attack roll. That's the attack roll itself. And we made it with our character with an axe or whatever the heck it is that you're wielding. It's probably something. Maybe it's, I don't know. And we've got to see if we can hit the armor class of our owlbear. Our owlbear has an armor class of 13. To hit something, you have to get equal to or greater than. Okay? So we definitely succeeded. 28 is definitely much greater. Okay, it's absolutely, definitely much greater than the armor class of the owlbear. So we hit the target. So that means we can do damage. And that's what the next thing says. When it says one target, we can only hit one target, and owlbear is only one target. Okay, if it said 2 targets or more targets, then that's fine, but it's one target. Cool. Then it says to hit 18 outside the brackets. That's the average damage that you're doing. You're probably looking at a monster stat block. In this case, I suspect. I don't know which one it is, but it'll be something. Okay, so we could just take the 18 and say to your whoever it is, I do 18 points of damage. Okay, or we can roll the dice. So we get rid of the 20-sided dice and we roll out damage, which is 2 10-sided dice. These are the 10-sided dice. Roll them. I get a 4, and the 0 is actually not a 0. That 0 is actually represented as a 10. Okay, so we got a 4 and a 10. So if I rub out all of this, we keep the 7 because we're going to add the 7 to whatever we rolled. First dice was a 4 on the 10-sided dice. The second one on the 10-sided dice was the 10. We add that together. What do we get? Well, that looks to me like 21 points of damage. So that's how much damage is lost. Okay? Whoever you hit, you've hit. And that's how much damage they lose, that many hit points. That's what you're looking at, or that's what it refers to. I'd be interested to know what creature or monster you're referring to here, because I suspect it is a creature or monster that you're referring to, because that's usually how they are listed. Okay, I have covered that question. Is there any other more questions that I need to deal with right now? Otherwise, I want to move on to actually, we're doing this, people. I said I was going to talk about opportunity attacks, and we're going to. So today is the day. Let's move this out of the way. And we can leave our owlbear there for now, but it's opportunity. Our opportunity. Opportunity attacks. Oh. Side question. Can you use animal handling to try and calm an owlbear? Of course you can. You can always try anything in Dungeons and Dragons. That doesn't mean it's going to work, but you can always try anything. That's the benefit and beauty of the game, is that you're playing a game where you can try anything, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work. And depending on what you try to do, you may have to roll dice, but if you do something that's really, really clever and smart and it's going to really probably make the difference, then guess what? You may not have to roll dice, you just succeed. Does that make sense, Nacho Man? So yeah, absolutely. It's up to the Dungeon Master. Player, if you try it, Dungeon Master says yes, then give it a go. All right, so let's look at opportunity attacks. There are a couple of things that I wanted to demonstrate with this. First off, you'll notice in the description, and I didn't pull up Sage Advice for a very good reason, because as it's written right now, it kind of reads like you could do quite a lot with it, correct? Opportunity attacks, you could do quite a lot. It would be impressive if you didn't consider this a huge opportunity. I feel like this is a huge opportunity for everybody. So opportunity attacks, as written, as raw, looks like you get a lot of options. But once you start pulling it apart, it gets more complicated. Because does that mean that if I move away here, that's when I provoke an attack of opportunity. When I move out of the reach of the creature, I provoke an attack of opportunity. If I am fighting an ogre and I move out of their reach, I provoke an attack of opportunity. Yep. What if they decide to move out of my reach? What if they move away? Yeah. What sort of attack can I use? Can I use a weapon? Well, probably yes. Yes, if you've got a melee weapon, yeah, absolutely. It makes sense, does it not? You're going to use a melee weapon. Okay, so I can use my melee weapon. Okay, first off, do I need to have the melee weapon in my hand? Probably do need to have the melee weapon in my hand, right? So you probably need to have it in your hand if it's going to work. I also need to be able to see the target. So if I'm blind or there's darkness and I'm in darkness and I don't have dark vision, I can't see anything, I can't attack the ogre if it moves away. All right, okay, I got that. That makes sense. That's a weapon. What about if I have a ranged weapon? Can I make a ranged weapon attack against them? No, because it did say something about melee attack. Did it not say something about a melee attack in there? I'm pretty sure it did. Yeah? Okay, so we kind of restricted. It has to be a melee attack. Fantastic. We've got that established. So I can't use a ranged weapon to make a melee attack. Done. Done and dusted. So if I have a bow in my hand or a crossbow, I can't make an attack with that against it, as the rule sits. What about if I want to cast a spell, though? What if I want to cast... Now, if I make a ranged spell, I can't do that because that's not a melee attack, is it? What if I cast a melee spell? Can I cast a melee spell? Well, I mean, because if you look at it this way, if this character were able to cast spells and was in fact the wizard, and the ogre moves away and provokes an attack of opportunity, it would kind of make sense that I would be able to do something like that, right? But then, of course, there's this feat that says, hang on, no, you have to have Warcaster to be able to cast a spell. And this is where a lot of rules get in the way. Warcaster is a good example. I can't count the number of times that somebody has said to me, the monster's moving away and provoke an attack of opportunity. Can I cast a shocking grasp or a melee spell on it? And I've said, and I'm about to say yes, and then somebody in the group has piped up and said, no, you have to have the Warcaster feat because we're playing with feats. And I'm like, oh God, I just don't want to get into this argument because I know fully well if I look at the Warcaster, as it reads, it kind of suggests to me that actually I could probably do that. Why would I not be able to do that? I should be able to cast a melee spell. That means Shocking Grasp would be an option. That means potentially Bestow Curse would be an option. And why would it affect me as a Dungeon Master or all the rest of the players? Because when a spellcaster uses up a spell as a reaction during an opportunity attack, well, that's one less spell that they had before. Now, if it's a cantrip, well, Shocking Grasp doesn't do that much damage anyway. And not only that, it may actually sort of affect other things, like it's got probably a better chance of being successful if they're wearing armor. If they're not wearing armor, no. Yeah, okay. All right. So that means that potentially we're looking at a rule system where we can use a melee attack with a weapon, okay, a melee weapon during an opportunity attack. That means a melee spell, it would kind of make sense. And by restricting that, one, it wouldn't make much sense. But also, two, it kind of takes a lot away from the game in the first place, right? All right, so here's another thing that I want to mention. So that now that I've opened that up, whether it's raw or whether it's intended as I don't care. I just want to put that forward to you people, because I've had this argument with people many times, and that Warcaster feat, if I could throw it down a drain or in a toilet, I would, because it's caused so many. It's messed with the game too much, as far as I'm concerned. Next, what if I don't have a weapon in my hand, a melee weapon in my hand, and what if I don't have a spell that is a melee attack? Okay. Now, it said melee attack. That kind of suggests that maybe actually bestow curse is actually a melee saving throw, so it's not an attack roll. So probably I can't use that. Although, again, that kind of doesn't make sense. But let's go back to unarmed strikes. What if I want to punch somebody? Can I punch them? If I can see them, can I punch them? I don't have a weapon in my hand. Apparently, the fist is now listed in the player's handbook under the equipment area to represent that it counts as being a melee weapon, but it's not actually a melee weapon. Hugely confusing, ridiculous problem. How did we get there? I'll tell you why. Because people write things in weird ways. Okay? That's what's going on here. I want to point out to you that it would be great if we could say, yes, we can do that. We can make an attack like that. We can punch them. We could kick them. So even if we've got stuff in my hands, can I not at least kick them? How much damage does an unarmed strike do? Unless you're a monk or you got some sort of special feature, well, frankly, it's probably going to do bugger all. You're going to do 1 hit point plus your strength modifier if you actually hit the target. Are you proficient with unarmed strikes? Every character is. Every character knows how to punch somebody, and seriously, I can assure you, since I taught martial arts for many years, everybody knows how to kick somebody in the groins. Okay? It ain't that hard. And oh my gosh, it hurts a lot. So I would say to you, unarmed strikes. Why not let those unarmed strikes be used as opportunity attacks? So when the ogre moves away, the wizard can kick or punch them, because they would know how to do that sort of thing. They would kind of have to learn. It's the first thing you learn when you're training in martial arts, is they teach you all this stuff. Okay? All right, so we've got that. What about if I want to make a unarmed strike in a different way? Not so much an unarmed strike, but maybe an improvised weapon attack. I'm going to say right now, that kind of says a lot, because what would be counted as an improvised weapon? Well, if I have a bow or a crossbow or a maybe not a sling, or possibly a sling. We could use the sling in our hand. You know, if it's already got a bullet in there, that's going to be helpful. But we were basically just slapping them with a sling. But we could use something like, what about the cleric uses their holy symbol. As the ogre moves away, we could use our holy symbol and sort of like pistol whip them. So we could use our bow, our crossbow, or our holy symbol. Now, how would that look though? Well, you probably want to apply disadvantage, because it's an improvised attack. So unless you're really good at, doing that sort of thing, improvised attacks, you're probably going to have disadvantage. Yeah. So you roll 2 dice, you take the lowest result. That seems reasonable. There are rules around improvised attacks already, are there not? Yeah. Now, how much damage, though, would a holy symbol do? Well, probably you would treat it like an unarmed strike, like 1 point plus your strength modifier. If you were using your bow, you would just sort of count that as whatever seems appropriate. If it's a standard longbow, well, maybe we're going to go we'll use a 4-sided dice. Improvised weapon attacks are usually a 4-sided dice, unless it's more appropriate that it be something else. We may even say it's even less than that. So there's definitely an opportunity to sort of see this as, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do an attack, but I'm not going to do it with a normal melee weapon attack. I'm going to use what I have currently on me. All right. Another question that comes up is, like, what if the creature provokes an attack of opportunity and they move away? Can I push them? Can I use the shove action? I want to use the shove action. I know it's a special melee attack, but can I not use the shove action? Now, I would say right now, that kind of actually is interesting, because the shove, actually, you could push them prone. If they're prone, then they have to get back up again. That's half their speed, or half their movement, and then they get to continue moving away. That would be a big bummer if that didn't work out for the ogre, wouldn't it not? Makes it a lot more interesting, though. What about if they just push them backwards? Well, that would actually help the ogre more, because it's trying to move away in the first place. What about grapple? Now, grapple changes everything. Seriously, when you consider the opportunity of allowing somebody to use grapple, so now our dwarf is going to try to grapple the ogre as it provokes an attack of opportunity. As it currently sits, you can't really do it in the rules. But if we do that and we succeed, well, the ogre's not going anywhere. It's not moving. It's not going nowhere, which means it might have to do something else. Yeah? Okay, so grapple, shove might be an option. What if I have a shield? What if I'm wearing a shield? Can I use my shield rather than using my foot or my fist to bash the creature? Would it do any more damage? It really doesn't matter, but it's still fun to consider that a character can do that without having to have a feat or a special ability for a class. Do you know what I mean? We've just opened up a lot more possibilities. Let's go somewhere else with this opportunity attack business. I want to present a different concept to you. Whether you have come across it before or not, I don't know, but I'm going to present it to you. What happens if for whatever reason, the wizard winds up in the front and there's an ogre and is about to smash it, and the wizard wants to get out of there, but they don't have Misty Step, doesn't have teleport, doesn't want to move, to disengage, take the disengage action and then move. What else could we do? Well, if we look at our spells, if your wizard or your caster has invisibility, here's an interesting fact. If I cast first invisibility on myself, I'm now invisible. You can't see me. I can now move away from the ogre and I don't provoke an attack of opportunity from the ogre at all. In fact, I can move right round the ogre and go over here if I like, and I stay invisible the whole time by being invisible, just because you can only make an attack of opportunity if you can see the target. Does that make sense? It does make sense. Does that look like it's exploiting the rules in some way? Are we doing something with the rules outside of what we're really trying to achieve here? Actually, I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's actually quite useful too. It's forced the wizard to use up a spell slot that they didn't have, that they won't be able to use for something else, and it's made sure that they stay alive a little bit longer. So there's a lot of potential with the opportunity attack to open it up to things that make sense. If it doesn't make sense, obviously don't do it. But if it does make sense, maybe it's time to give it a go. Do you know what I mean? Anyway. I just wanted to mention that because I know a lot of people sort of get, I don't know. I find even myself in the same boat sometimes, where we just fixate on the rules as written, rules as intended, and sometimes we need to not focus on rules as fun, but rules that make sense. Do you know what I mean? Rules, when the rules make sense, let's do that. It's one of the reasons why I've tried to get my group to stop using feats, because I feel like feats, in many respects, people think it opens up the game. I actually think it restricts the game. I mean, it means that people can do less. Things that they should be able to do. In any case, that is that one. I'm going to go back to the chat very quickly. I want to talk about the readied action, which I will do in a second, but let's see if I can find my face again. There we go. I suppose I'm going to have to put this hat back on and drink some more water because I've been talking so much. Oh, and it's break time. It's break time. Okay, so we're going to come back. I'm going to ask you a question, people. And I'll put in a comment here as you are waiting for me to do my business. Hashtag. What page in the Dungeon Master's Guide are the rules for climbing on large creatures. Now, why am I asking this question? Because I can't find them. That's part of the reason. But also, too, I want to talk about, like, what does that look like a little bit? Because it would be fun. What page in the Dungeon Master Guide are the rules for climbing on large creatures? I know there's more than a few people who've probably had situations crop up in their game. Somebody wants to climb on a creature and, like, how do we do that? The Dungeon Master Guide gives you some rules, and they suck. They really suck. And anyway, let me put that in. I'm going to let Arnold look after you for just a short period of time while I take a break, and then I'll be back, and then we'll go from there. Squeezing myself back in here. Phew. Here we go. I will endeavour to see if we can't go through this chat fairly quickly, and then we're back onto the ready to action, people, because yeah, I want to do that. Ready to actions are fun. They're just not simple. Dear. Anyway, I bet you there's a few people who are looking through the Dungeon Master Guide and trying to find that page. It is how hard is it to find? It is hard to find, people. Trust me, it's a pain. Okay. Let me just switch over my cups. I think that one's got more water in it. Okay, let's Let's get back to where we were and start dealing with some just the Q&A. See where we are with things. I want to say that somebody was in here and actually mentioned something that I thought was interesting. So, Noro, hardcore arm wrestling option rule. If the individuals make a contested strength saving throw choose. Yeah, you could do that if you wanted to. I mean, you know, you can do whatever you like in the game. That's fine. Seeker, hello Seeker. If you are still here, Seeker, I just wanted to say, I think I understand where you're coming from with regard to doing a look-see at the new Dragonlance book. So what I will do is I will schedule a live stream for Friday of that week, but I don't know when the actual thing will be available for me to access on D&D Beyond. You'll know that more than I do. And so what I will do is I will shuffle that live stream once it is available to me. And yes, I will do a look through of the Dragonlance adventure book. Okay? Since I know you've been like, let's do this. I mean, it's going to happen at some point. It's not going to hurt. It's this time of the year. There's hardly anybody on YouTube anyway, so it's not a big deal as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, I mean, if you're happy for me to just do a page through and look through it, the whole thing, that's what I do, and comment, that's fine. So if you're here, I'll consider doing that. Yep, it'll happen. Now, Robert's all good. Side question, I've answered that. Always confuses me is when you have monsters come into a fight during the second or third round, where do they sit in the initiative? So Nacho Man, if you have monsters come in at, part way through the battle, you can roll initiative for them and add them in. But if that's too complicated, like if you don't want to do that, just put them at the bottom of the initiative. I do that often with my player characters. If they show up late, they don't get to roll initiative. I just put them at the bottom, because it's easier to put them into initiative that way, particularly if you're writing on a piece of paper. If you have like a battle mat like I have from Paizo, then it's easy. But if you don't, and you've got to write it down, and there's no space in between the names that you've written down in your list, then it's hard. So just put them at the bottom. It's fine. It's all right. Levi Freeman, hello. Now, Levi, I did notice... Yes, I did spot you mentioning something about the bow and the arrow as an improvised melee weapon. That was where my head was going. It was actually written down on a piece of scrap paper. I just didn't want to get distracted from where my line of thought was going. It would have been very easy for me to get lost otherwise. Norok's gone. Okay, you go have some dinner, dude. Dinomancer. Dinomancer is also a patron, supports me on Patreon. Welcome. How's it doing? How's it going, buddy? Your audio is broken. You have to get new hardware. Well, that's a shame. Hello, Warren. How are you, Warren? So player 1 is pivoting around the ogre, so there is a flanking between himself and the player 2 ranged. How do I help the player know that the move will provoke attacks from minions nearby? Just let them know. I mean, look, I think the easiest way to view this is like, just let them know that they might attack you. I mean, they could, if they don't have a melee weapon and they could do something else, just say, look, anytime somebody moves away from them, Warren, it's actually really easy to implement what I just talked about with opportunity attacks. If anything, the concept behind it and the way it would be written, the way it's written now covers everything, as long as you don't create feats and have sage advice that says counter to that. It all works perfectly fine. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. You'll let me know, Warren, if you think that's not the way to go. I put them at the end. They have take two seconds just to assess the situation. Yeah. Oh, what book am I reviewing tomorrow? Nacho Man. Dragon Pulp. I haven't missed your point. I'm about to go and check that page. Well, it is going to be 10 a.m. New Zealand daylight time. Yes, in New Zealand, it'll be the Astral Adventurer's Guide, which is just one of the books from the Spelljammer collection. I have some good things to say about that book. I have some bad things to say about that book. And that's all I'm going to say. Okay, so that's the book I'm going to cover tomorrow. Now, for those of you who are in North America, what time will it be for you? I believe it's 2 hours earlier than I normally do it. So in where the heck is it? It's 10 o'clock. I'm never going to be able to remember this. I'll never be able to figure it out. Yeah, I just, yeah, my brain is, it's so hot. Okay, so page 271. Is he right? Is Dragon Pulp right? I'll be very interested to see if he is correct about that. 271. It's a tiny section. Here we go. Yes, action options. Climbing onto bigger creatures. And that is somewhere in this book, obviously. I can't even remember which chapter it is. Dungeon Master Workshop. It's under Dungeon Master Workshop. Good to know. Thank you for that. I do appreciate that. In fact, maybe what I will do is I will go to D&D Beyond. If we have time. I'm not going to spend too much time on Ready to Actions. Go to Source. Dungeon Master Workshop. And we'll just go to there. And if maybe I can find that section. Since you've now pointed me in the right direction, it might actually be easy to find it. I never find it that easy to find anything on D&D Beyond. Particularly when there's so much stuff. Fear, horror. Is it laid out the same way as the book? Sometimes I wonder if it is. I get the distinct feeling that it isn't sometimes. Combat options. Interesting. So under combat options, I'm looking at the combat options and I could not find the section here. Oh, here we go. There it is there. Okay. All right. I found that. Good. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Anyway, back to the conversation at hand. Is climbing on a monster considered difficult terrain? Well, we'll get to that in a second. Let's go back to the readied action because I want to talk about the readied action. This is, as I said, it's probably one of the more painful rules to understand. So let's have a look at this thing and how to deal with it. Because I think it's going to be an interesting discussion as far as I'm concerned. Do I need to actually go over the readied action? Are you guys going to remember how the readied action works? I suppose I should just read it out first. Maybe I'll read it out first. And then we'll look at it at the table. That's probably a smarter idea. Okay, I guess we can do that. Where is it? There it is. Readied action. Okay. Settle back. Let's get this done. Okay, so the readied action. Sometimes when you want to jump onto a foe or wait for a particular circumstance before you act, to do so, you can take the readied action on your turn, which lets you act using your reaction before the start of your next turn. And what it doesn't say is you take your reaction on somebody else's turn generally. First, you decide what perceivable circumstance will trigger the reaction. So you have to state what the trigger is when you're using the readied action. So players, you need to make sure you do that. Dungeon masters will get pissed off when you don't. Okay. Then you choose the action that you will take in response to that trigger, or you choose to move up to your speed in response to it. Okay, so we can move or we can take an action. Examples include, if the cultist steps onto the trap door, I'll pull the lever that opens it. Okay, so nice and simple. Pulling a lever is probably just an interaction, so it's not a big deal, but in this case, if we're going to ready it, it's going to use up our action instead of just an interaction. So we won't be able to make an attack. If we do our readied action, no attack. Okay. And if the goblin steps next to me, I move away. So, all right, so if the goblin moves closer, I move away as a response. That's my trigger. When the trigger occurs, you can either take your ready reaction right after the trigger finishes or ignore the trigger. So in other words, when it actually happens, you decide whether you actually do the thing that's supposed to trigger it. Or you can decide and change your mind and say, no, actually I've decided that's actually not a good idea. I'm not going to take my readied action. So that actually gets done as we're playing. Interesting. A lot of people don't notice that And it's something that I've noticed at my own table where the Dungeon Master has spelled it out and asked this question. I know one because the Dungeon Master in my group, who's Dungeon Mastering right now, since I'm not the Dungeon Master I'm playing, he's probably paid attention to that part of the rules because ready actions are confusing. When you ready a spell, you cast it as normal but hold its energy. So you've cast the spell, you hold the energy, which you release with your reaction when the trigger occurs. To be readied, a spell must be a casting time of 1 action. Now it said 1 action, but it didn't say what about a bonus action spell. Now as far as the rules go, it says action. So that means bonus action spells can't be readied? Well, that doesn't make any sense. I can ready a spell that actually takes longer, but not one that takes a less amount of time. It's just one of those things. What I would say to you is let bonus action spells be readied, okay? Let bonus actions be readied. It's not spelled out here necessarily, but I think you need to consider the possibility that it's something to be open to. And holding onto the spell's magic requires concentration. So you have to concentrate. If you ready something, a spell, you're actually concentrating on that spell, even if it isn't a concentration spell. So that's brings in a whole lot of other things. Not only that, you've already cast the spell. If you ready a spell, you're going to ready to cast Fireball or Firebolt or whatever, you've already used that spell slot. So if you decide in the end not to cast the spell when it comes to the triggered action, that trigger point, you don't get to keep that slot. You've lost the slot. You have to cross it out. As soon as you decide to ready that spell, it's already been cast on your turn. You're just holding that energy to release it at a particular time. A lot of people kind of forget this. It's one of those things that kind of gets lost. It makes sense. I think the only reason that maybe people have not noticed this is because they don't want to lose the spell slot. So don't argue with your Dungeon Master about that sort of stuff, okay? Because you have cast the spell. All right, you're just holding on to the energy till it's ready to be released. If you decide to do so. If your concentration is broken, the spell dissipates without taking effect. So in other words, if before you're able to get to the triggering point where the spell that you've decided to ready is going to activate, if somebody attacks you and breaks your concentration because you fail the concentration check, you didn't get to do your readied action. It got lost. That's kind of like life. That's how things work. Okay, so if you are concentrating on, say, the web spell, and you ready magic missile, your web spell would end. So if you've already cast a concentration spell, as the rules state, you're concentrating. But if you decide to ready a magic missile, don't do that. Why? Because now web finishes. You don't want web to finish. So be careful about that sort of thing. Remember, if you ready a spell, it's now a concentration spell. And if you take damage before you release the magic missile, you're going to lose it. So there's all that there going on there. So let's have a look at the board. And I just want to present a few different ideas and concepts to you before we move on to our next problem. Well, here's the thing. Do you know what? So Warren, your discussion about how do you express movement and fencing in a battle and so forth, so it's it doesn't feel like it's too mechanical. Look, it's up to players to decide to describe what their players are doing. The players' characters. The players, they decide how to do that. When it comes to your monsters and how that's being expressed and making it cinematic, I think a lot of the stuff does make things feel far more cinematic because you have more options. Remember, the whole point of playing Dungeons and Dragons is to actually have more things you can do. And the last thing you want to do is constantly have to have class features and feats and other things, and you can't do something unless you have this. When it's really obvious that even the most simple, any character should be able to do something like that. One of the things I've argued on many occasions is every single character should be able to, if they want to, they should absolutely be able to grapple a creature and then pin them. Now, how you go about doing that is up to you, but it shouldn't need to be something that you learn to do. It's just like riding a horse. Every character should be able to ride a horse. Do you know what I mean? Okay, anyway. Yeah, so disengaging is usually not a good idea. So in any case, let's have a look at readied actions, shall we? I'm going to move these guys out of the way for a second because that's not going to help me. And let's have a look and discuss what the readied action kind of spells. Right now, given our situation, since we have, say, we've rolled initiative and we want to do something, but right now our party can't see any enemies. There's nobody to see. They're all in different locations that make it impossible for them to be seen for whatever reason. Can't be seen. Yeah? Hiding in inappropriate places so they cannot be discovered in some way. Can't see these creatures, can't see these ones. And if a fight were to break out because a goblin shot an arrow through one of these arrow slits here, that would be, okay, we're rolling initiative. An arrow fires your way, and maybe it hits one of the characters, maybe it doesn't. We'll find out soon enough, right? So what are we going to do here? How do we look at this situation, and how do we resolve a lot of this stuff? Well, first off, a readied action could be, okay, I can't see a target right now, but I have a bow, and I'm going to stand here on the bridge, and as soon as I can see somebody, I'm going to take a shot. Or I might decide, no, actually the best way to deal with this is I'm going to move back behind the bridge and use part of the bridge as some cover. This railing here, I can use it to say it's half cover maybe. And I'm going to take a shot. Okay? And if I see one of the goblins show up or pop the head out, that's when I take my shot with my arrow. That's my readied action. That's pretty simple. We know how to do that. That's fine. The wizard, again, could move back behind the bridge and decide to ready an action, going to cast Firebolt. But I'm not going to cast Firebolt until I can see a goblin. So a goblin's got to make pop out its head or make an attack so I know where they are. Yes, they might have a lot of cover to deal with because there are arrow slits here. And maybe they won't. We'll see. Who knows? Might happen that way, it might not. That's fine. So that's nice and simple. There's a few other things that I would say that really trip people up. What about if there's an ogre bashes through this door and it's now my turn and I decide, okay, I'm the fighter, I'm going to stand here. And I tell the others to run away. So I've moved partially, only partially. Does that mean, since I've only moved about 10 feet and I've got 20 feet left, that I can now ready an action to move away? Well, yeah, it does actually. Does that mean I get to move just 20 feet or do I get to move 30 feet if that's my speed? So what my trigger is a readied action is I'm going to move away from the ogre if it gets within reach to be able to strike me. That's what I'm going to ready. That's my readied action. I want to move away. So the ogre on its turn moves up, and then I decide, okay, just as it gets up to there and it's about to swing, I'm going to move away. What am I readying? I'm readying a dash, aren't I? Am I readying a movement? I could ready a movement if I wanted to, but I've already moved. But I only used part of my movement. Does that mean that I get to move 30 feet as the dash, plus another 20 because I only used part of my movement? Well, here's the thing. You can only break up your movement on your turn. That's my understanding, is you can only break up your movement on your turn. But a dungeon master could say, look, you only used 20 feet during your move. You can have that as well. That means I could move back 50 feet if I wanted to. But as the rules are situated now, I would only be able to use my dash as and ready my dash to move, which means I'd only get 30 feet. So there's another little thing to consider. I'm not particularly worried about how you run your games, people. If you're thinking that that's how I work, that's not really how I work. I just want to discuss things and see where you might be going with this. Right. So William Strike has presented a suggestion here. If I ready an action to dispel magic against someone with haste, so haste is dispelled during their turn, does that creature lose 2 turns instead of 1? What makes sense, William? Do you know what I mean? If you're the dungeon master, what makes sense? Does it make sense or does it not make sense? Which way would it work, do you think? It makes sense to me that if you dispel it, you probably don't lose 2 turns, you only lose 1 turn. Yeah, so if our wizard decides they're going to cast Dispel Magic on this character here, okay, because for whatever reason they need to do so, I don't know, I'm not sure why it would need to be done, but if they do so, I would say it's only going to be 1 turn. Why would it be 2? Okay, Dungeons and Chronics. If you have a shield, can you use it for cover? Well, here's the thing. There used to be different sizes of shield. Yep. We used to have bucklers, which only gave you a very small armor bonus. We had your basic shields. There were different types. And we had a tower shield. And you could literally use a tower shield because it was so large as a form of cover. You could literally lock it down and use it as cover in some way. It already gave you an armor class bonus as it is. So to do so, really you had to give up the ability to attack. And that's really how a tower shield works, is if you lock down your tower shield and you tuck yourself behind it, to try and use it as like almost total cover, rather than half cover and 3/4 cover, if we had tower shields in 5e, then you wouldn't be able to attack. Yep, but you now have total cover. This is something that you have to talk with your dungeon master about, because you're dealing with things outside of the scope of 5e. Okay. And yeah, I would say if you are using tower shields in your game and you say, maybe that is a readied action that you can utilize. Okay, so what else can we do as a readied action? Well, we could ready an action to cast Healing Word on somebody who's about to fall down. So maybe they're fighting an owlbear, and the cleric says, look, I'm going to... William, you don't need to be sorry. I'll come back to this in a second. I would say to you, if the cleric wants to cast Healing Word as a reaction, a readied action, a reaction, but Healing Word is a bonus action spell, why would you say no to that? Why is it necessary? Are you telling me the only way that would work is if they are standing right behind them and they use Cure Wounds, which is in fact an action to cast? Is there more benefit to the cleric doing it from range with Healing Word? Well, yes, because they're further out of reach. They can do it from range rather than being right up close if they can't get up close. But they do less healing. There's not going to be as much healing. And their trigger is if the fighter goes down. If they fall to 0 hit points, I cast Healing Word. Or are we going to say, no, you have to be up close, right beside them, and no, the only way you can do this is if they drop to 0 hit points, you can cast Cure Wounds. Right? That's to stop them from falling down and winding up being trampled by an owlbear. Okay, all right. So, William, what have you got here? Sorry, I should have been clearer. Haste reads, when the spell ends, the target can't move or take actions until after its next turn, as a wave of lethargy sweeps over it. Yeah. So that's how the spell works. So that's I mean, you just follow the directions. It's I mean, no matter, even if Dispel Magic ends the spell, you just follow whatever haste reads as. If you're running the game as written, rules as written, raw, or as intended, that's what you would do. But if you are doing something else with it, then, okay, maybe it will look differently. Here's another thing I want you to consider. What if you decide I'm going to ready an interaction? So it's going to use up my action, but what would an interaction be? Maybe I'm going to draw my sword, or I'm going to say something. I know a lot of people say, I want to say, look, I'm going to say something in about 6 seconds. And, so the wizard's going to yell out, I'm going to cast Fireball if you come any closer. And if they start coming and rushing you, then it's time to cast that. Does that mean that we can't ready an action to actually say something? I think we can. I think that seems reasonable to me. I would consider it. Would it not be more fun to do it that way? Does it make sense? I think it makes sense. Remember, it's not just about rules as fun, it's rules as does it make sense. And as soon as the rules don't make sense, there's something wrong. And this is why we have Dungeon Masters in the first place, to make those decisions. So that players can try to do anything. They might not succeed, but they can try anything. Did I cover readied actions sufficiently? Do we have pretty much all the little bits and pieces that we needed to collect up with this? Hopefully we have. Okay. I'm not finished though, because I have a beef with a particular set of rules that Wizards of the Coast has put out. For those of you who are not familiar with my channel, I do have many beefs. I do consider it a failing on my part in some respects, because I would be far more popular and more in tune with the ethos of the YouTube paradigm if I did not say these sorts of things. But I am going to say these sorts of things because I can't help myself. There's a good reason why I do things this way. And let's talk about climbing on big creatures. Does anybody like climbing on big creatures? I know I do. I think it's great fun. Looks like a great time. How many times have you had a player who wanted to climb onto a creature? So let's have a look at the rules as written right now for climbing on a creature, because they're quite interesting and what they have tried to do. And they also present a whole lot of problems too. Quite significant problems that break the concept of does it make sense. So this is in the Dungeon Master Guide, and thankfully somebody actually knew how to find it. I believe it is page 271. Okay, I'm on D&D Beyond right now. Climb onto a big creature. If one creature wants to jump onto another creature, it can do so by grappling. Okay, so it says we can do it by grappling. A small or medium creature has little chance of making a successful grapple against a huge or gargantuan creature. However, unless magic has granted the grappler supernatural might. So, we're not trying to grapple the huge creature or the gargantuan creature because we can't do that. As the rules are written, that makes sense. We shouldn't be able to do that. Okay? As an alternative, a suitably large opponent can be treated as terrain for the purposes of jumping onto its back or climbing or clinging to a limb, after making an ability check necessary to get into that position and onto the large creature. The smaller creature uses its action to make a strength athletics check or dexterity acrobatics check, contested by the target's dexterity acrobatics check. God blimey. Okay, we've got another contest going on here. That's fine. So now this is reversed. This is the actual reverse of doing a grapple or doing something like a shove, where you had to initiate it with a strength check or an athletics check. Now you can initiate it with either a strength or dexterity check, which means athletics or acrobatics. And the target only gets to use dexterity as a check to resist, which doesn't make sense, people. Okay, I want to point that out right now. It doesn't make sense that the only thing that the target creature is allowed to use is a dexterity acrobatics check, rather than a strength acrobatics check. Does it not? Does it not make more sense that a large creature would be able to actually throw a creature off because they're using their strength, okay, and their athletics, rather than acrobatics and dexterity? Here's a big problem with this. Look, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to tell you why I dislike it. That's one reason. My general feeling is you should be able to get onto a creature using acrobatics or athletics or strength or dexterity, and you should be able to resist using the same ones, because it makes sense. This way it doesn't make sense. Hello, Chrismanthia. How are you? Okay. If it wins the contest, the smaller creature successfully moves onto the target creature's space and clings to its body. While in the target space, the small creature moves so the target has an advantage on attack rolls against it. This here I have issues with again. Now, here's the thing. If you are standing on a creature that's moving around in the middle of a battle, how easy is it to do that? It doesn't seem very easy at all. So why do they have advantage? Because they're on the back of the creature, but they've also got to stay on the creature. Okay, that's a big aspect of climbing onto another creature. It's like, how do you stay there? A small creature can move around within the large creature's space, treating the space as difficult terrain. That's fine. We just treat it as difficult terrain. That's cool. I'm happy with that. The large creature's ability to attack the small creature depends on the small creature's location and is left to your discretion. So basically, the Dungeon Master decides all of that. Fine with that. Satori. Hello, Satori. I am doing my best. Okay, so let's have another look at this. One of the reasons why they probably have structured the contest this way is that a smaller creature will probably never succeed on getting onto a larger creature. Do you know why they've structured it that way? Because they want people to be able to jump onto large creatures. I want them to jump onto large creatures, but doing it this way doesn't make sense. There's another way you could do it. I'm going to suggest that in a second. All right, so next, the larger creature's ability to attack the creature depends on the... So we've talked about the Dungeon Master. The larger creature can dislodge the smaller creature as an action. So apparently you can only do it as an action to knock it off. Scraping it against a wall, or grabbing or throwing it by making a strength athletics check contested by the smaller creature's strength athletics check or dexterity acrobatics. So now we've gone the other way. And we've actually made it easier for the smaller creature to resist this. And for the larger creature, it's harder. Because I only get one option. Again, the larger creature should be able to use dexterity as well. Moving around should be part of the issue. Is like, you know, if you move around fast, you're more likely to come off. So I think that the contest needs to be apples for apples. Both get to use strength, both get to use dexterity in any case. It will always mean that the small creature is at a disadvantage when dealing with this because large creatures are pretty strong and they're probably going to use their strength. And smaller creatures are probably going to have to rely on dexterity, which makes sense. That's fine too. If you have a high dexterity, better chance of success. Okay. So I want to just talk a little bit about this aspect of the game, and I want to suggest a different way of doing this, people, rather than the way that we have been presented with. So let me go to here, and I'm going to rub this bit out here. I'm going to get rid of my little goblins. They can go over here. They're really not part of the equation right now. And I'm going to bring an ogre in here because that ogre is going to be more useful to me. And we're going to bring this dice over here a little bit and put this over there. Let's just rearrange things a little bit, just like that. Climb on creature. I think that's going to be, yeah. I'm going to suggest to you that you should be able to climb onto a creature that's one size larger than you. It might not necessarily be treated as difficult terrain if it's only one size larger. So if you're medium and you're trying to climb onto something that's large, and in this case the ogre is large, but would it not be fun? And does it make sense that we could climb onto an ogre? I think it does. So how does that look, and how would we go about doing that? Here's my suggestion to you. How many times has a player said that they have set themselves up in a way that they want to jump onto a large creature? But instead of trying to make a contest between strength and dexterity, they wanted to do something else. Because the most sensible thing to be saying right at this point is not, oh, do you know what I would like to do? I would like to make a grapple and try to grab onto the creature. No. That's not what the players want to do. It's not what they had in mind. If they have a sword, Either it's a short sword or a long sword, okay? Possibly a dagger, but a short sword and a long sword probably works better. Even a great sword. An axe might work. If you have an axe, what they want to do, and this is what I get from players most of the time, is, Fred, I climb onto this thing here and I want to leap over onto the creature as part of my movement, and I'm going to use my axe or my sword and hack into them, and when it bites into its flesh, I want to hang on to it so I stay on it. That's what they're asking to do. That's actually that's a lot easier to do, isn't it? And it actually kind of makes sense that they would probably do better to be able to use something that's sharp and going to pierce skin, that has a handle on it that you can hang on to, rather than making a contest between grappling. So what it would look like more, in this case, say our fighter, who has a 5 and has a great axe. Now, a great axe got a pretty good blade. It doesn't go in quite as well as a sword. I would say a short sword or a long sword, or even a great sword, is probably a better option. Well, now, if I can make an attack, and I can attack this creature, and I say I'm going to hang onto the weapon when I jump over there. Well, first off, I probably want to make them do a jump check. I want you to actually make a jump check. What's my jump check going to be? Well, what am I going to use? Athletics or acrobatics? Frankly, I think either one should be suitable. Some people, when they jump, are using more strength, and some people, when they jump, are using more dexterity. Okay? I think both come into play when jumping. And I know we're looking, okay, jumping should be athletics. I would use either one. So in this case, the fighter, frankly, has a +5 to athletics. So how do we jump onto this creature? Well, roll a 20-sided dice. I'm going to say this is a skill check or an ability check. To jump over here, before you make your attack, you've got to succeed at doing that. What's the DC for this? Just make the DC the armor class of the ogre. Why not? And you just pick whatever the armor class is for an ogre, and that's what you select. That's how you run it. It's a lot easier than trying to come up with some sort of convoluted reason why somebody should be able to do something a particular way. And the armor class of an ogre in this case is actually quite low, so it's only 11. So it's probably going to succeed jumping over there. Or do we make that a contest? I don't like contests because people get confused. Okay, so roll a 20-sided dice. You jump over. Do you succeed? I rolled a 10. 10 and 5 is 15. I set my DC as the armor class to jump onto this thing, which was 11. Ogres aren't that quick. It's fine. It's good enough as a check. I mean, if you really want to have a particular way of working it out, you could go 10 plus whatever the modifier is for your dexterity, which is minus 1, which would mean the DC would be a 9. 10 minus 1 for an ogre would be 9. So it would be even easier to do, right? But I'm going to say, let's just make it the armor class. It's easy. So we succeed. We jump on to the creature. But part of the problem is, even though we've jumped there, we've also got to stay there. We're not necessarily going to succeed in staying there unless we actually succeed with the attack that we want to make. Correct? So now we also need to look at, you got onto the creature, you're in the right place, you did your jump, you used your athletics or your acrobatics, either one, and now we'll make an attack with that great axe, or in this case it could be a sword, but great axe in this case. So what I'm going to do is we'll make an attack roll. I roll it. I got a 1. A 1 is an automatic failure. Even though it comes to 6, that's a failure. No. So you jumped over, you were successful, but your axe did not bite in, you missed, and you fall to the ground. And we play it out that way. What about, maybe we will actually succeed this time if I roll again. Let's see if we get a better number this time. So we'll wind back the clock a little bit. And I got a 7. So 7 plus 5 is 12. So what is the armor class of an ogre? Well, the armor class of an ogre is pretty low. They're actually pretty easy to hit. It's only 11. So we succeed this time. Okay, so you succeed. You are now holding on to your great axe. that has bitten into the skin and flesh of this creature. And now you're going to roll damage. And of course, you will pick up your 12-sided dice, which is your axe, and you'll add that to your strength modifier. And in this case, I believe the fighter has a +3. 3, whatever I roll on here, 11. So we get 14 damage in total. This is what the players were trying to achieve in the first place. And the Wizards of the Coast rules do not address this. That when players say they want to jump onto another creature, it's usually they want to use either a grappling hook or their weapon as a way of actually securing their position, rather than their hands. Whether you allow them to do it with one hand or both hands, it doesn't matter. This is actually far more achievable. It's actually simpler to understand and adjudicate. This is how I do jumping onto another creature. If players say they're going to do that, that's how I do it. I do an acrobatics or athletics check to get onto the creature, and I get them to make the attack if they're using their weapon as a securing anchor point. And we're done. It's nice and simple. And it does exactly what the players wanted it to. Now, the problem is when you're hanging onto a creature like this with your axe or even your sword, how do you attack the creature in the following turns? Well, that's up to them. They figure that out. Not my problem. Okay. In any case, I've covered how I would look at adjudicating combat with a large creature, which is you always allow both parties to use strength or athletics when the contest comes into play, if you're using a contest, or you just go straight for, let's just make it a check that is a acrobatics or athletics check to jump onto the creature versus the armor class, because armor class is related to dexterity. That's all fine. That actually makes sense. And then to secure their anchor point, well, actually, it's super simple. You make an attack roll. And there's really not much else to it. It's probably the simplest way to deal with it. Chris, you like this way? Chris Manthia, I'm glad you do. If people like this way, then do it this way. Okay? Make a skill check versus armor class. Make an attack roll versus armor class. And it's done. How do you feel about falling damage being capped at 20 d6? William, I think capping falling damage at 26-sided dice is stupid. But the reality is that's what they've put in Raw. So as a dungeon master and players, I mean, certainly, I think if you're falling more than 200 feet, you're dead. It doesn't matter how many hit points you have. You're dead as a doorknob, like you've fallen too far. And, you know, terminal velocity does a lot. Unless you're falling into something very, very soft and you're super lucky, you're dead as a doorknob. In any case, I thought I would present that to people today. So yes, when it comes to falling damage, my suggestion is change it because it's stupid. Anyway, I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined in for this live stream today. I know I've kind of, I think maybe have I been a bit too aggressive? Maybe I have. I just wanted to put things across in a different way because I kind of feel like sometimes things get a bit too silly. We are codified too much in 5e, frankly. And I know a lot of people want more codification, and other people want less codification. And I'm for doesn't make sense. Anyway, thank you to all my patrons who support me to make sure that I can do this every single week. Thank you to everybody who's been part of this live stream, put forward your comments and watched and listened to my ranting and raving, and hopefully found something useful out of the demonstrations that I put forward today and the things that I've said. Thank you for watching the replays of my live streams and my edited videos and putting up with my shorts. I know that they're a pain in the ass, but I have to do them. Otherwise, YouTube hates me as much as they will generally hate me. And so wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. We'll see you next week. Until next time, keep rolling those 20s.